Hi everybody, this is John Kittle from Kittle's Fine Art and Supply, and you can probably see that I'm not in my studio. I'm actually at my house because of our current events, the COVID-19. This is going to be our first project on video. So we're going to be putting this on YouTube, and you'll be able to actually do this project for yourself at home. You can get a group of people together and do it as well. So you can do whatever way you want. We've produced what we call our take-home kits. In this kit, you'll be receiving your creative surface, which is the wood palette, 2 strips of blue painter's tape that are pre-torn for you, and I'll show you what that's all about in a minute, a fully illustrated instructions, step by step, even as far as taking the kit and opening it up. So everything's on here. Template or our stencil kit that you'll cut out on your own, and I'll show you exactly how to do that as well. The things you'll need to provide are right here at the top of our instructions. Paper plate for mixing, paper towels, a cup for water, an apron or a shirt that you can paint in, newspaper to cover the table surface, or if you have an easel, it's great to use an easel, but it's nice to cover the surface where your paint can get on it, scissors, and or a hobby knife. I prefer the hobby knife. It's a little easier to cut things out with it, but scissors work just as well. So you'll also be getting in your kit 2 different brushes. I'm going to simulate basically the size of brushes you're going to get. I'll be working with everything that you're going to be working with. So it shows you that you can do this easily. Also in your kit, you'll be getting paints to do the painting as well. Everything's in there. So I've already loaded my paints on my paper plate here. We'll be getting to those in a minute, because what we're gonna do is basically when you receive your kit, again, there will be tape on here for you. You're gonna remove this tape and just set it off to the side. You don't wanna throw it away, because these are the tape that we're gonna make our tree with. You'll open up your creative surface right here. I've already done that, so I'm just gonna start with mine. You're gonna take your tape. What we're trying to create here with these cut edges, you'll notice this when I put it up here. I'm gonna bring this one over to the edge, just like that. And this one is the exact cut of that piece of tape. And we're gonna move that one over. Now I'm gonna create a large enough trunk for my tree here, my aspen tree that we're gonna be painting. And I've moved those apart so I have a nice wide aspen tree. I've left plenty of room on this side for my birds and my branches. So, but we're gonna start, our main focus is gonna be our tree right now. Grab one of my big brush here. Again, this is a simulated, basically you're gonna have short handle brushes, but that's about the size of the large brush. So the first thing you do in this painting is we're gonna start with what is called the yellow ochre. I'm gonna add just a little bit of white to my yellow ochre. I'm gonna lighten it up just slightly. You can see it's not much lighter. And I'm gonna randomly go right down the middle of my tree, putting some of that yellow ochre in there. And I'm kind of keeping a horizontal brush stroke. It's a fairly random pattern. We're not worried too much about a perfect covering of the color. We're not worried about perfect coverage of the surface. We're just gonna come in here and put some of this color in. Every once in a while, if you wanna add a little white to it, you can. You're gonna use the tip of that brush. Again, horizontal brush strokes, but not perfect. We don't want perfection here. We're more concerned about just getting a little bit of a yellow hue right down the middle of our tree, just like that. So that looks pretty good. It's okay if you see the brush strokes. Brush strokes are really good in this case because they help the illusion of the bark of the tree. We want that to be there. So I'm gonna rinse my brush out now. When I rinse my brush out, remember to open up those bristles by brushing the bottom or scrubbing the bottom of the cup. Then I'll just use my apron here to dry it off. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start on the left side of the tree here. We're gonna do our brush strokes horizontally back over the yellow. And we're gonna go just about to the middle, maybe a little further here and there, but you'll see what I mean when I paint it. We're always gonna go away from the edge of the paint over top of it so that we don't push paint up underneath the tape. We're gonna start with white. I'm gonna take a scoop of white, and I'm gonna take a little bit of my burnt umber, just a little bit though, because I just want to make this just a little bit on the kind of warm gray side. It's a warm gray, kind of off-white color. And we can add more brown as we go. We don't have to do it right now. But we're gonna see this white paint mix with our yellow as well, because our yellow is still wet. And we're just gonna come across. And you'll see it pick it up and it lays it back down. And you can see exactly what I mean by just brushing back over the tape on the edge here. We're not trying to perfectly paint right up to that tape. It's okay if it doesn't paint right up to it. But as you go, you're gonna see little streaks of yellow come out into my white, which is what I want to happen. And you'll notice that I'm just kind of painting over almost to the middle. I'm not trying to, I'm just painting one side of the brush and then I'll flip it. You'll see that yellow mixing into that color. And we'll go back over some. And the thing is you can see like right here, I can still see some of that surface color coming through there. But that's really great because it actually adds to what the bark looks like on the tree. So remember, we're not trying to be perfect. We're just trying to create a rough surface texture on this tree bark. And little pieces of yellow showing through and picking up. You'll notice the consistency of my color has changed as I work because we're mixing these colors on the surface as we work. All right, so we're gonna do, once we get this cleaned up and everything's ready to go here, gonna go back over a few little spots here and there. I like that the way it is. I'm gonna show you a little technique that I like to use, and that is to flip my surface. So I'm gonna go ahead and release it. Make sure I don't take any of my tape with me. And I'm gonna flip that. In your instructions, it will tell you to do this. You can do it, you don't have to do it, but I like to do it because it keeps my brush stroke consistent, because now I'll be working back from the opposite side. Now with this opposite color, I'm gonna go pretty much with straight white. And the reason is because the light's gonna be coming from this side of the tree, which when we flip it back over is actually this side of the tree. But this is gonna be a little bit darker on this side, and I want it a little bit lighter on this side. So you're gonna see a bit of a difference in the color. And again, I'm going over the yellow, but I'm gonna leave a little bit in the middle exposed. I'm not gonna cover it completely up. And again, I'm just going across with a horizontal brush stroke, and I'm leaving some of that roughness that I'm getting from this brush stroke. So as I'm gonna finish up here in a second, and as soon as I do, I'm gonna be able to actually take the tape off. I don't have to let it dry. And in your instructions, it tells you that you can use a hairdryer to help dry your paint. The issue with the hairdryer and tape is if you use a hairdryer over tape, sometimes it wants to make the tape stick really well to the board. So take the tape off first. Do not blow dry it with the tape on. I'm gonna come back over here and put a few light marks here and there just to give it a little bit of variation. You don't want this paint to be perfectly consistent. You can see how almost tattered it looks, and it doesn't look like much right now, but let's take the tape off and see what that looks like. So I'm gonna flip this back over. While I have it off of here, I'm gonna peel my tape, and you get a nice, rough, textured edge from that torn piece of tape. So what we end up with is a fairly realistic looking trunk of an aspen tree. Now I can use a hair dryer to blow dry this to dry it quickly. Now that it's dry, it should be fairly dry. I've got a few spots of thick paint that might not be perfectly dry, but they're pretty dry. They're dry enough. For this step, what we're going to be doing is creating what most people call on an aspen tree is the eye, or the eyes. And those are the areas where the limbs grow out of the tree or have grown out of the tree and the limb is broken off. They look like an eye, so that's what we're going to do. For this one, we're going to mix a little bit of black, and I'm using my small brush now. It's basically all detail work at this point for the tree itself, but mostly brown. So I'm going to take probably about a 2-to-1 ratio. So imagine taking 2 scoops of brown to 1 scoop of black, and you're going to basically make a really dark brown. It's going to almost read black, but black is just too dark. We're going to use that on some of the limbs and some things, but for what we're going to do first, we're going to do this really dark brown. So I'm going to have 2 branches, so I know that I'm going to have one in this area here growing out, and one that's kind of growing out from the back side of the tree out here. So I don't need to create an eye for the one that's growing on the back side, but this one I need one, and I'd like to put another one on this side with a branch kind of growing off the side here. But I'm going to start here, work down, and then if we need to put some more in, we'll put some more in. So what I do is I start by making the upper brow. So I'm taking the tip of the brush, continue stippling to create almost like an eyebrow above the eye. So sometimes you need a little bit of water in the paint just to thin the paint out. Makes for a lighter spot. And now I'm going to create a little bit of a center where my limb is actually growing out. Now you'll notice the brow kind of goes outside of the edge of the tree. So I'm going to create my center circle. You can kind of see the eye start forming. And you can use a little bit of yellow ochre in here too, in some spots. Mix it in with that dark brown. And I'm going to create a little bit of a lid underneath. This little area is basically what it is scarring that happens when the limb grows out of the tree. And it kind of pushes out past the skin of the bark, and it creates these little ripples and wrinkles all over the tree. So that's going to be my first one. Now, my limb will be growing out kind of down this way. We're going to have a little bird sitting right about here. So that's good for my first one. I'm going to go over to this side. I'm going to do another one, basically on the opposite side of the tree with another, it'll have another little limb growing out of it. So I'm going to start with, again, the brow, top. On this one, I'm going to go ahead and paint the actual limb. I don't need a stencil for that. It's a short little limb. I'm going to go with solid black for the limb, or the little. I'm just going to paint that in right to the edge. So it's kind of a nice thick branch or limb that's coming out of there. And then what I'm going to do is actually take a little bit of the white that I was using before, a little bit of brown. We want that brown in there because we want it to have that warm gray color. So we have black and brown and white. And I'm mixing up a bit of a warm gray. And I'm going to put this on the top of the limb. And I'm going to let it blend a little bit with the black that we put down, just to give a little bit of the highlight on the top of the limb. We'll go back in and put a little bit more right on the top edge here. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and because it's a piece of wood, so it has a little bit of texture to it. So that'll give us a little bit of texture. And we can round that up a little bit around right at the base where it's growing out of the tree. And we're gonna leave that alone for right now. So I'm gonna take a little bit of that gray that we have, that warm gray, and I'm gonna put a little bit around the edge of some of our lines here, just to give a little bit of varying color. Add a little water, thin it out just a little bit, get most of it off my brush that I can, so I can come up here and I can start putting a few little marks on my tree. Just using the tip of the brush, held horizontally, and I'm going to put a few of these little detail brush strokes in. I'm just touching it to the surface of the tree. And now I'm going to go back to my dark brown that we mixed up earlier and do the same thing. We're going to put a few marks here and there. When I do the details, I don't want to do too much. In this case, less is more. We can always put more, but it's hard to do. You can overdo it pretty quickly is what I'm trying to say. Just be careful. I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to create an eye up here just going off the tree. This one's, we're seeing a little bit more of it. So I'm going to do the lower lid. We're going to see the upper brow coming down right about here. And that one looks pretty good. Now I don't need one for my second branch because that one's actually growing out from the back of the tree where we don't really see the brow. But I guess what we could do is we could pull a little bit. We're going to bring that branch out right about here. So that brow would come around the tree and maybe have a little bit of an edge showing just about right about here. So now I'm just going to go back in and I'm just going to keep detailing. I'm going to keep putting little marks here and there, little groupings of marks here and there. Don't forget about your water. Every once in a while you need a little water in some of the paint. It dries out on you, and when it's dry it doesn't make as nice of a mark on the surface of the tree here. You can go in and put some dots, little marks. Use the corner of the brush if you want, and just kind of create a few little dots here and there, and maybe even a large kind of a mark, just like that. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be specific. In fact, we want them to be fairly random because nature is very random. And like I always like to say, nature is perfectly imperfect. So that the more pattern you come up with without it being random will look too unnatural. It'll look too man-made. So try to be very, very random and with your brush strokes. I think we're done. I don't need to put any more in there. The thing we're gonna do next is actually put a little more weathering on the surface. So I'm gonna rinse my brush out, wipe that off on my apron, set that brush down. I'm gonna go back to my large brush, rinse it out, make sure it's fairly dry. Then I'm gonna take just a little bit of brown and white. I won't have any black in this one. And again, this is gonna create a more warm gray, and it's kind of washy. I want it a little bit washy. I'm gonna wipe my brush off. I don't want a ton of water on there because it'll run. We don't want it to run. But what I can do with this color now, put a little more brown in that. What I can do with this light kind of washy color is I can come back in and create some dripping and some staining. Might be a little bit light yet, so I'm gonna put more brown in. So underneath here, I'm just gonna pull a little bit of that color down. Again, we want it to be washy, so you can add more water if you need to. All right, that's good enough. So we're gonna rinse that brush out. We're gonna use our stencils that you're gonna cut those out with either scissors or a hobby knife. We're gonna apply those after this is dry. I have my stencil that I've cut out. I used my hobby knife to cut this one out. You have a negative and a positive here. So here's your positive side, your negative side. You can use either one. It's gonna be up to you how to do that, because what we're gonna do, instead of with this one, you technically could apply the paint right over the stencil. So if I were to line that up where I want it, say like right there, I can actually stipple the paint right over top of that. But what I've done in the instructions is actually, we're just gonna use a regular number 2 pencil and we're gonna draw it out, trace it, and then you're gonna paint it in. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna use the positive side. So again, I'm gonna line this up where I want it to grow out of. And I think right there will be good, because my little bird will sit right there. So we have enough room there. Then I'm gonna trace my piece down here, kind of growing. You can flip it if you want, kind of change up the angle of the branch. You can omit some of it as you trace it, which is what I'm gonna do with this one. And then I'll have my bird going the other way. Start with this one up here. I'm just gonna hold that in place. It's gonna be a little tough. It's a lot easier to do this on a flat surface. All you have to do is just trace. And then you can take that off. You may not be able to see that very well on camera, but it's there. I can see it and I'll be able to paint it. Any of the areas that I've missed, I can just fill in. And this one, again, it's growing out from the back side, so I can actually have it come out even further like that. And just by doing that and exposing more of the ends of the branch, it's changed the look of the branch. So now we have basically 2 different looking branches with the same stencil, and now I'm gonna paint those in black. I'm gonna go back to my small brush, add a little water to my paint, not much, but just enough to get it rehydrated. And just like we did our first branch over here, we're gonna do the same thing for these branches. I'm gonna be careful to cover up my pencil marks. It's okay if you go outside the line just slightly to cover that up. So that looks good enough for my black. I'm gonna do my second limb here. This one went over the tree right in the front here to connect. This one, we're gonna go right up to the edge. Not going to go over the tree. All right, there's my black. And now what I'm gonna do is go back to the gray that we used in this area. I'm gonna rehydrate that. You can always just make some more. A little bit of black, brown, and white. That brown is important because it does help warm up the gray color that you get. Straight black and white is pretty dark or ashy looking. And again, top of the branch, just a nice little highlight that we're gonna create. And it's okay if it streaks or blends in with some of the other black. So there you have that. We're gonna dry this again, and then we're gonna apply our birds. All right, so I'm gonna take the negative cutout of my bird and do the outline tracing now. So I'm gonna start at the top. I'm gonna situate the bird where the feet are on the branch and the belly, this belly area is on the branch, and it might even overlap the branch a little bit. Then I have his little tail here. Now, I see the tail going behind the branch, so you'll see that as I trace. There we go. So now I'm gonna actually move down to the lower branch and I'm gonna flip the bird over. So I've got to decide which branch I want him on. I think I'm gonna have him on the top portion, not this bottom one. Although it would look pretty nice to have it there. So let's go ahead and do it there. His tail will go off the edge of the picture, but that's okay. That works pretty good. So what may happen is when I paint over this black area right here, it may mix in with the color above, or it may show like kind of ghost shadow. Now, a lot of this is going to be covered up because in the original picture, which is on the back of your instructions, you'll notice that the wings are dark, and you'll see that as we paint, and the head is dark. So some of this will get covered up with a wing cover. It's this area right here that I might have to do 1 or 2 coats of the lighter color to cover that up. So let's get started with that. So the light color is what we're going to be working with. I'm going to go ahead and use my small brush and rinse that out, dry it off, make sure there's no dark paint left in the bristles. As we color, the head's very white and the front chest of the bird is white, and as it goes back it gains a little bit of yellow color, and then it gains a little bit of gray underneath. So we're going to do that as we paint. We'll start with white to begin with. And you'll notice I'm going to skip a little bit of the head because I know that some of that's going to be black. So we really don't have to have a ton of that on here. We just have to have the white where the white's going to show up. So I'm leaving a little bit of this area uncovered. Now, not completely, because I want to make sure that it overlaps. So I'm going up fairly close to the front, but I know that I don't have to have it completed. So I'm going to make sure that I don't go all the way. I'm just going to bring this right around. And again, this is straight white. Now my brush strokes are very random. You can do all one directional brush strokes if you want. It's up to you, but I like to see brush strokes and I like to see the flow of the brush stroke. So mine are fairly random. I'm going to add just a little bit of the yellow ochre to some of my whites. Just a faint yellow color that you'll see as I start painting it on. Just a little bit of yellow in there. Now I don't have to paint all this area because I know that there is, but I'm just going to do the fade into the white. So I'm going to fade that little bit of yellow in there. And on this smooth surface, it's a little harder to cover with a lighter color like this, like white. So I'm gonna kind of blend that together now, right into that white. You'll notice it looks almost a little gray up there, and that's just because of the thin coloration of the white. I'm gonna take a little bit more of that white, making sure I'm not picking up too much yellow. And kind of go back over. Just a little bit. Just to brighten that color up. And then to blend into the yellow a little bit more. So now, we have enough there. I'm gonna then take a little bit of the brown and mix it into my white and yellow mix. And really, all we need to do is just a little area back here underneath where the wing's gonna be. I'm gonna darken it up just a little bit more with my brown. Make that nice warm gray. And then pick up a little bit more of that yellow ochre. And blend the two together. So I'll repeat that process on the lower bird, and then we'll detail the birds. So now that these are thoroughly dry, I can now use the pieces that I cut apart that came from the inside of the bird. So what I can do is I can use either one of these pieces. I'm going to choose to use the middle piece because it does everything that I need it to do. I'm going to line this up with the bird and the little feet. And what that is going to allow me to do, I'm going to draw in where the black lines that I need to paint over. So the wing, the tail, we know that that's going to be black, and the head portion. So I overpainted, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't overpaint too much. Now I'll go ahead and do the bottom one just like I did the top one. So on the bottom one, I have a little area that needs a little more white. So I'm gonna do that first, dry it, and then we'll start with the black. While it's drying, I can do the black on the top bird. So I'm gonna fix this first. Just put a little more white in there. That should do it. While I know it needs to dry, I'm just gonna put a little bit of the rest of the white back on the white area, just like that. I'll let that dry. I'm gonna work on the black on the top area now. So I've rinsed my brush out, now I have black, and I'm gonna fill in the black areas. Now don't forget, we've drawn in here the little eye area. I need to paint that black as well. I'm gonna paint around it first though. We're going to go ahead and dry these and then finish up with the little details. So now that our birds are dry, what we're going to do is go back in and do some of the fine details, just finishing up the little feet, some pattern of feathers on the wings, and a little bit around the eye. So what we're going to do is going to do that color that I want, that warm kind of gray color with brown and white. And if we get a little yellow in there, it's okay. It's not gonna hurt anything. Now, I don't want it too light, so I'm gonna add a little bit more brown because these are just kind of like the highlights of some of the feathers on the wings. So what I'm gonna do is start and I'm doing these little brush strokes. About like that. So I'll do this on the bottom bird as well. And if you make a mistake, the greatest thing is it's on a black surface, so you can just paint it right out if you have to. I just made a little bit of a, I don't know, it's not really too bad, but I'm just gonna take a little black and get rid of a little bit of that mark. And now I can go back, pick up a little bit more gray, and put a little bit better mark in there that I wanted. So now with even a darker gray. Gonna add a little black to it, a little more brown. What I want to do is, once I get the right color here, I'm gonna actually put a little bit of this spot over where the eye is, but I'm gonna go back in with a little black as well. So this will just help me to see where I want the eye to be. We have those little marks there that show us where that is. I'm going to take now straight black, back over most of that I just did. That little bit of brown that I did gives a little bit of a ring of an outline of the eye. And as soon as those are dry, I can put my little white highlight in. While they're drying, we're going to be doing their little toes. And I'm going to go back to the same color that I was using for the highlight color on the wings. And I'm going to just lightly put that in there. It needs to be a little bit darker than that because the gray on the actual limb itself, it's not showing up very well. And I know you can't see really well sometimes when I do this, but to see the detail, I've got to be up close. So just put those little feet in there. And then once we feel our eyes are dry enough, what I'm going to do is actually use the back. You can use the back of the brush, or you can use a toothpick to put the little highlight on the eye. If you have a small, very small, fine tip round brush, you can use that, or you can use the tip of a pencil. Let's try using that today. So I'm going to put a little white on the tip of my pencil, test it out, and very, very lightly in the corner of the eye, we're just going to put a little dot of color. And that's a little highlight on the bird's eye. Well, that'll finish it up for today. Thanks for watching. You can always find our kits at kittlesfineart.com/shop. There's lots of different kits, lots of different things to do. We're getting more and more materials up on the website as well. Stay safe, stay healthy. And this time where you have to social distance, this is how we're going to do our classes. Have a great day. Thank you.